It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Did you watch every NHL game last night? Of course not. That's impossible. So Locked On brings you Locked On Game to Game NHL. With Locked On Game to Game NHL, we take you inside every arena to every game and give you the Locked On local experts insight. And by the end, it's as though you were at every game. Find Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Locked On NHL feed and follow today. Locked On Game to Game NHL, taking you to every arena for every game with the local experts. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back, people, and it's time for your source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Friday edition. It's time to look at some banger league beauties that could take you over the top this season. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. It's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. It's been a bit of a spotty week for Steele and I. We've been a bit busy, so thanks for holding us down. We will be back Monday through Friday every single week for the rest of the season, so keep it tapped right here. Today's episode, my friends, you know I got to hit up our friends at FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Steele, look, we come on this show and we talk about a lot of different angles. And you know we're getting to these big-time bets. I've been on a heater again. I know you've been up and down a little bit, but for the most part, we're feeding the fans some winners. So we're going to get there. We got to pay the bills. But we also have to look at some of these very interesting angles where you can profit and make your fantasy team really full. And these Banger League beauties, Steele, I'm looking at guys that bring a little bit of offense, but really fill out almost every category. And the guys at the top of my list bring a lot of offense and still bring the body. They still bring the PIMs. And, man, if you can get a hold of really, I would say, the top three guys on my list, you're probably in really good shape in your league this year because even when they're not getting you those offensive stats, they're chipping in with PIMs, shots, blocked shots, and otherwise. So I'm hyped for this conversation. I got five guys. I got a couple of honorable mentions. Who are you looking at for your top Banger League beauties fantasy-wise?
Yeah, I think the top two we're going to have the same guys, or at least one of the same guys. I got a couple honorable mentions as well. First off, my two honorable mentions are Pierre-Luc Dubois and Sam Bennett. I think those two guys are very, very good for Banger Leagues. And like you said, Banger Leagues are anything considered when you have hits, blocks, penalty minutes, all of those stats on top of the goals, assists, and power play points, all of those. But both Pierre-Luc Dubois and Sam Bennett are both physical guys, and they have a physical presence in the league no matter what team they're facing. And they have like that get under your skin mentality every time. We know that both those players have a very ferocious mentality, and especially if they get ticked off, they can get ticked off quite easily as well. 54 penalty minutes for Bennett. He fights, he hits, he scores points. A little bit of a down year, but one of those guys that does a little bit of everything, as well as Dubois can play a very two-faced game. Again, one of those guys that can be very easily aggravated, which will set him off and get him on the course of penalty minutes and a bunch of nastiness to his game, but still an offensive threat. I did a little bit of a top five ranked here for Banger League. So my number 5 guy is Luke Schenn of the Vancouver Canucks. I think he has to be in the top 5, and he's been one of my actual favorite additions to my fantasy team this year. And I think he gets overlooked very constantly because of his age as well as where he is at this point in his career. He's not much of a threat offensively. He chips in 3 goals, 18 points on the season, but
not bad.
He leads the league in hits this year with 250 hits, adds 80 blocks, 70 shots to go with it. He's top 10 in penalty minutes as well with 69 penalty minutes on the year. And he's one of those guys that are up for grabs right now before the trade deadline. I know Boston as well as Calgary are, in the mix right now of potentially offering a trade to Vancouver for Luke Schenn. I think it's like a 3rd round pick and maybe something else with that. But as Vancouver becomes sellers this deadline, he's gained a lot of traction around his name because of his stellar play so far, because of the penalty minutes and hits and his defensive ability.
Down the stretch too, Steele, I alluded to it off the top. Really capitalizing on one of these situations with one of these players that could have, let's say Luke Schenn has 2 assists, a bunch of hits, and maybe gets into a scrap or lays some big penalty minutes, has a misconduct or something crazy. That could be the difference for you at the end of the season. One of those crazy Radko Gudas type nights where he runs like 4 guys, gets 10 hits, and you still have a bunch of points. So I think Luke Schenn, it's also interesting now all of a sudden he's getting all of this attention. He could be huge if he moves to another team as well, Steele, and starts even picking up even more assists. He was my top honorable mention. So very nicely that I'm just going to leave it at that because you really talked about Luke Schenn nicely. 252 hits is impressive at this stage in his career. Logging 17 minutes of ice time a night. Would I like to see a little bit more? Yes, but it's his age, so that's what you got to expect. I looked at my list this way, Steele. I looked at it with the hits, of course. I looked at it with the block shots. I looked at it with penalty minutes, but I also tried to look to some of the players that still bring the offensive value because, sure, Tanner Jeannot, Radko Gudas, even the guys like Noel Acciari and these players, they bring that physical edge and the block shots, but they really top out at 10, 15 points a season. So I'm looking to a guy like JG Pageau, who, yes, he can struggle at times offensively, but he is solid. 30 points almost this season. He is 28th in the league in hits. He gets a few PIMs. I like what he does, Steele, overall, just like hockey sense, but he really can be a nice fill-in up the middle. I've picked him up at multiple times across the last few seasons. Really good dynasty fantasy piece. Has the offensive hand, Steele, but 142 hits this season, 171 last year. To me, he's just on a kind of a banger league beauty team in the New York Islanders. A lot of players on that team that could fill the bill. But I like JG Pageau's game. And he's on the fringe. It could have been Luke Schenn here. It could have been a couple of other guys. But JG Pageau definitely doesn't get enough love as a banger league beauty, in my opinion.
I'm a huge fan of JG Pageau. I talk about him quite often on this podcast.
Good fill-in.
Like I said before about JG Pageau, he's one of those guys that even if he maybe doesn't chip in with the goal and assist, he's putting up 4 shots, 7 hits, and a couple blocks in the game. And those peripheral stats continue to add up. 29 points on the season. He's one of those very underrated banger league beauties. So I was looking at him, but I ended up just leaving him off the list. He could have been.
I know you're going to like my next guy too, so I'm glad you like JG Pageau.
All right, perfect. I had to include this guy on the list because he's too special and he does everything that you've talked about. He's an offensive juggernaut. He hits, he shoots. Doesn't get the amount of penalty minutes as I expected, but nonetheless, I had to have Alex Ovechkin on the Banger League Beauties list. He has to be on here. If you're in a Banger League, Ovechkin is like an immediate first-round pick, in my opinion. He does everything you want him to do. He's top 25 in hits this season with 142. The amount of shots he takes is absolutely off the charts as well. Already 227 shots this year on net. He continues to put crazy numbers, crazy stats up offensively, goals, assists, points every single season. It's very unlikely that he's going to stop in that regard. But the one thing that kind of surprised me, and this is why he's number 4 on my list, is you don't really see him in the penalty box too much. He plays a very clean, strong game. His checks, his physicality is always clean. He only has 26 penalty minutes this year so far. So that's why I put him at number 4. The penalty minutes aren't up there, but when you consider everything and the amount of, he's 34, 35 years old, 35, I believe. And he's still top 25.
37 now, Steele. He's 37.
He's 37 now. Top 25 still in hits. He's putting up over 60 points. He's going to get to probably 70 or 80. And he's been an absolute juggernaut for the Washington Capitals. And just want to say this real quick. Condolences for Alex Ovechkin and his loss this past week. It's never easy losing a family member. Never easy, of course, losing your father. So condolences out there. Hopefully, he's spending some time with his family and takes the next little bit off and just kind of get back, regroup mentally, and get into a state where he thinks he can get back with the team and going, but never easy to lose a family member.
Well said, Steele. These guys are family members and human beings first. Maybe that sometimes gets overlooked in the fantasy and the betting world because we move these guys around and talk about them like they're pieces. They're human beings, and Alex Ovechkin is a father now himself. We know how close he was with his own dad. Condolences to one of the greatest to ever do it, and maybe the greatest goal scorer to ever do it if he keeps going at this pace. He's on my list as well, Steele. Let's get to the rest of it, though, right after the break. I've got a few more guys. I've got Ovi on this list. I got a bunch more bets. I had a big night the other night, 3 for 3. Let's see if we can keep it going. Let's keep it going with a little bit of a talk about our friends from Built Bar. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar, and if you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, you know where you got to go. You got to go get some Built. We're past the holidays, we're past the New Year's resolutions, and it's just time to eat healthy and still be delicious. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. They're so delicious, you won't even know they're good for you. It's perfect for an anytime snack before or after the gym. It really doesn't matter. Get yourself some Built. And we're not sure how Built does it, but these bars, they taste like candy bars, but they maintain those amazing macros. And what's even better, they're healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For a while, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can head down to your local Walmart or Sam's Club to hit up the deliciousness from Built. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, or if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie, batter, and churro. Thank us later. Go to Built.com still and order yourself a box as well, or hit up Walmart or Sam's Club. That's our friends from Built and Built.com.
I just learned Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right, everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from the trip where you sort of learned how to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Thank you so much again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. We appreciate all the love, all the support that you show us on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, partners of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Flip, I've been talking at the mouth a little bit, with this top 5 group. I've got 3 players left, though. I want to hear who is next on your list. Who is your top 5 Banger League beauties?
And very quickly before I get there, I was just thinking about this during the break. When you look at the top 3 or 4 or 5 teams in your fantasy league this year, something tells me they're going to have at least 1 or 2 of these guys. In my keeper dynasty leagues, these are the players that if you can really target and get that good balance of categorical filling in, and they bring even 30 or 40 points, yes, some of these guys on the list, the really elite ones and the most elite, are bringing even more points. You're going to be very much in the mix for winning your league. So this is an important discussion year in and year out, and you and I will continue to have it. But a guy named Adam Larsson, Steele, and let me explain first. This might be the most underrated pick, and he almost was honorable mention because, like I said, and a bunch of the guys that you mentioned, it's a pretty subjective top of the list, whereas I think the top few are pretty finite. Adam Larsson here, 24 points this season, plus 30, almost 25 minutes of ice time per night. He's sitting in the top. Where is he still here in hits? I saw him on this list. He's in the top 20 in hits. He is bringing it this year on all fronts, Steele, and I don't think anyone's talking about it. 149 hits, 110 blocked shots, 100 shots on net, 31 penalty minutes, and almost 30 points. This guy is a 4th overall draft pick who had a really tough start to his career. But in Seattle over the past 2 years, Steele, Banger League D-men, there haven't been many better over the past couple of years that have filled it out like him. He's plus 30. He has been a Banger League beauty this season. I don't know how long it'll last. This next year, he might not even be on the list. But this year, for me, he's definitely on the list, doing a little bit of everything for a really underrated Seattle team.
I'm just very thankful that you mentioned Adam Larsson because he was in the top 5 with me at the beginning.
I know you like this player.
I do like this player. I traded for this player. He's helped me out significantly since I've traded for him. And yeah, I just really appreciate you bringing him up because he was on my top 5 list. After, scanning a couple of other players, he eventually just fell off. So he was one of those guys, again, could have been mentioned in the honorable mentions, but I like that you were mentioning him. I got a defense at number 3 right now, and it's Brandon Montour of the Florida Panthers. I think this season he has been the biggest surprise and the biggest standout, maybe right behind Josh Morrissey for defensemen this season.
True.
Very big surprise. And he's already broken or on pace to break many of his career highs. He's, goals, assists, points, shots, time on ice, hits, penalty minutes, all of those. He's either broke or is about to break this season. He's 3rd in penalty minutes this season with 85 on the year, 161 shots, 61 blocks, and 74 hits to top it all off. 45 points in 55 games is why he's on this list, because he's been one of those, again, Josh Morrissey standout seasons, career high, one of those biggest defensemen and an absolute stud for the Panthers on the blue line. And honestly, I think he's looking back at what the Panthers did this offseason, and Mackenzie Weegar being traded was probably the best thing that has happened for Brandon Montour. And he's 28 years old, right in his prime right now. So he's having a step out season. He's top 3 in penalty minutes. The hits are a little bit down, 74 hits, not top 40 or anything like that, but the penalty minutes are there. The points are there. The shots are there. He's getting it done on the blue line for the Panthers.
Yeah, I don't know if he would have made my top 5, but the impressive standout offensively and him eating up this opportunity in Florida, I think you might actually be just kind of seeing what Montour can really do, really taking this opportunity and running with it. He probably would have made honorable mentions, but I'm here for it. I don't hate it. Ovechkin is number 3 for me, so it's really kind of we flip-flop at 3 and 4. I'm not going to talk too much more about Ovi other than you mentioned his shots on net steal as just another one of those things that he does really well that maybe not everyone still remembers just because how long he's been doing it so well. He's led the NHL in 12 seasons in shots on net. 12 seasons. And hold on, how many Rocket Richard trophies? 9.
Yeah.
9 Rocket Richard trophies. And I just have to say this about Alexander Ovechkin. The fact that he does still throw around his body, and definitely a banger league beauty, the man has over 3,000 hits in his NHL career. And these ain't no half throw the shoulder out at the last second. These are train track, choo-choo train style hits. And the fact that he has been so good in sticking in the lineup and staying healthy for the most part, to me, numbers, accolades, all that. I think you and I have had this conversation. The fact that he plays with the edge that he has and he still has been that reliable and healthy is the most impressive thing for me about Alexander Ovechkin. And I'll just leave it at that. He is my number 3 on this list.
He's been probably the most durable player over the last decade. Very durable player. But for me, these top 2 players for Banger League Beauties, they have to be in the top 2. So I'm very excited to see.
I don't think we're going to have the same top 2.
I don't think we are either.
Okay.
They have to be number 2 and number 1. At number 2, I have another Florida Panthers player, Matthew Tkachuk. He has to be in the top 2 and has to at least be in the top 5 for Banger League Beauties. He has shown the world that it doesn't matter who he plays with or where he plays, that he is that guy and he will dominate you no matter what. He's 4th in points this season, 75 points in 54 games this year. He's 5th in penalty minutes, 74 on the season. Yep. And this has been a little bit of a down year for Matthew Tkachuk in the hit category. He only has 31 hits on
because
the
he's
season,
been carrying that team.
But he has been carrying the team offensively. He's getting it done in every single other category. He's top 10 in shots with 211 on the year as well. So he's pretty much top 10 in most categories this year. The most important ones anyway. But again, it's been a down year for the hits. We know that this guy plays with nastiness and an edge to his game. He is out there usually laying the body out, but he's been more focused scoring goals and setting up his teammates. I think Matthew Tkachuk has to be top 2 on this list. And this kind of just shows why the Florida Panthers are just outside of a playoff spot right now, because they have 2 guys who are top 5 in penalty minutes this year. They have 2 guys who are top 5 in penalty minutes, and they've been they've been kind of hurting their team with that regard, but again,
It's true.
Also helping them on the offensive side.
Hey, and with the goaltending, it's been better. But now watch this team go if they can eat that, kind of crunch the penalty minutes down a little bit. And now they're getting some goaltending. We know that they have enough talent. They've been in the mix the last couple of years. There's just so many good teams in that Atlantic and so many good teams in the Metro. I don't know if they're going to find a spot. We'll see. There'll be a lot more playoff talk. There's going to be a lot more trade deadline talk. We're going to have our friend Ian McLaren from Locked On Bruins on to discuss the Bruins next week as well. Hit us in the comments, though. Hit us in the reviews. What do you want to see? Who do you want to see? We're going to have a lot more guests and a lot more content coming up, including big-time bets in a hot minute steal. I also very much wanted to mention this player as honorable mention. It was on my list. Didn't make the top 5, but could have. Jacob Trouba, in my opinion, fantasy-wise, he might not be in the top 5. Jacob Trouba, in my opinion, if I was building a hockey team and I'm putting together what I think a prototypical defenseman looks like, it's Jacob Trouba. On and off the ice, I love what Jacob Trouba does as a hockey player. Yeah, the offensive numbers might not be there. 4 goals, 14 assists this year, but he plays a lot of ice time. 162 hits, 133 block shots. He fills out a lot of awesome categories, and in my opinion, defenseman, if we were doing a D-men Banger League Beauties, he's for sure in the top 5.
Yeah.
But my top 2 guys, Steele, actually, and I have a feeling they're the same because my number 2 is the same, and they're interchangeable, and they both have the same last name. Yeah. Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk both play a very similar style of game. Are they different players? Yes. But when it comes to producing, they do it a little bit of everything, and they do it with the same bit of greasy style and a little bit of in-your-face, I don't know what the adjective I'm looking for here is, but they have a nasty streak to their game. Sometimes it costs their team, but when we're talking fantasy, baby, getting those penalty minutes on a big night of offense can take your team over the top. I sound like a broken record, but oh my goodness, are these two the definition of Banger League beauty, Steele?
Yeah.
Brady Tkachuk this year, and he's number 1 for me because I just see a bigger season, a bigger career for him overall. That's where I'm at right now. They're interchangeable at 1 and 2, realistically. Yeah. 22 goals for Brady, 34 assists on a down year for the Ottawa Senators. Let's see what this guy can do over the next couple. But realistically, Steele, Matthew Tkachuk probably having the better season so far. But in my opinion, Brady is the number 1 Banger League beauty.
Yes.
Hold on 1 second here. 154 hits and coming in with 75 penalty minutes as well.
Yeah, no, he is number 1 for me as well. Literally the first note I have here is has to be number 1 every single time, Brady Tkachuk. A 23-year-old captain who puts everything on the line for his team and just does everything for his team that his team needs from him. Leads the Ottawa Senators in points, penalty minutes, shots, hits, 56 points this season, which is good enough for top 30 in the league. 75 penalty minutes, which is 4th most in the league. 154 hits this year, which is top 15 in the league. And he also has 200, and let me just check real quick. He also has 223 shots on net, which is 6th most in the league this season. So he does pretty much everything, just like his brother Matthew. But, being 23, being the captain of this team that is in rebuild mode. Again, I mentioned this, back in September when we were doing our mock drafts, that Brady Tkachuk is one of those players that should be going in the 1st round, but most likely getting taken early 2nd round because he just does a lot of everything.
That might change next season, if he keeps picking it up.
I believe so. I think it will because his team looks like it's in the right direction. It's getting better. We are going to get to big time bets very, very quickly, but just real quick.
This is Nick Morgan from the Locked On Predators podcast here to let you know the following message is brought to you by Discover. Did you know you can reduce the number of unwanted calls and emails with online privacy protection? The latest innovation from Discover. Discover will help regularly remove your personal info, like your name and address, from 10 popular people search websites that could sell your data, and they'll do it for free. Activate in the Discover app. See terms and learn more at discover.com/online privacy protection.
This is David Harrison from the Locked On Commanders podcast, and this episode is brought to you by US Cellular. At US Cellular, they know phones are great, but they're not always great for us. Sure, they connect us to so much, but they also distract us from, well, us. The us that actually laughs out loud with each other instead of just texting it, that knows being in the same room doesn't always mean being together. So let's find us again by putting our phones down for 5 days, 5 hours, even 5 minutes. Join US Cellular in the Phones Down for 5 challenge. Find out more at uscellular.com/find us.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button, leave some comments on the YouTube channel about what you think about this top 5 Banger League Beauties list. Who might you add? Who might you take off? What did you think about it? Leave some comments on the YouTube channel. And thank you so much again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. We are going to get to big time bets. And Flip, I'll just hand it off to you because you have been on fire, hitting those locks as well. Me, not so much. So I want to hear what you have to say about this 5-game board.
I appreciate that, Steele. It's been a rough year compared to last year for me overall, and I am very, very close to coming back to that even 500 mark on both my overall record and my lock of the night record, and a big part of that has been this second half already for me.
Yeah.
I'm looking around at a lot of teams here, Steele, right now for Stanley Cup bets, for odds, for good spots to sprinkle a 15 or 20. And some of these teams that I'm going to continue to bet on down the stretch will be the same ones that I'm looking at those odds for. And one of those teams, honestly, Steele, because I don't think they get enough love, and I think it's the best team in the Pacific Division, it's the LA Kings. And I think they're going to be major players at the deadline because I could really see a Jacob Chikrin and a depth forward piece, maybe a goaltender, taking this team to make some noise in the playoffs because they are dynamic offensively. They've been scoring a ton of goals lately, and they're rolling into the Anaheim Ducks barn. I know the Ducks had played a little bit better there. They had posted a couple of wins, but now they're back to 3 straight ugly losses of allowing 6 or more goals, and enroll the LA Kings, who have played really good hockey over the last, 7 games. Yeah, okay, lost to Carolina, lost to Tampa Bay, 2 close games. Then they shut out Pittsburgh 6-0 and dust aside the Sabres 5-2. Give me the Kings on the puck line, on the road. Puck line again, Steele. They've been hitting plus 110. I think the Kings absolutely start to destroy some of these weaker teams in the Pacific because I do think they are better than the Vegas Golden Knights, especially right now, and I expect them to come out on top in that division.
Yeah, it definitely is a smart pick to go with the Kings in this situation. This is the game that I went with my first pick. I went a little bit of a different route, though.
Hit me.
I'm actually taking the Kings and Ducks under 6.5 goals at plus 103. I was looking at the record and the last couple of matchups. 8 of the last 10 games between these two teams have gone under the number. The last 4 games have gone under the number.
Yep.
So I'm going with a little bit of a trend. At first I was thinking that this could be a little bit of a high scoring game because they've been letting a lot of goals. Kings have been scoring a lot of goals. But for some reason, when these two teams come together and they play each other, it's usually under the number. So I'm going to stay with the trend here, under 6.5 at plus 103.
4-2 Kings. 4-2 Kings. Stays under the number, and we get our puck line.
Yeah, exactly. You get the puck line. I get the under 6.5. That's the score we're looking for. 4-2. You know what? I might even bet for a correct score 4-2 just because of that.
Oh, we have
under
to
6.5 plus 103 for my first pick. My second pick might be a little controversial here, but I'm going with it anyway. I am taking the Blackhawks on the money line plus 212 against the Ottawa Senators.
Okay.
The Blackhawks have won the last 8 meetings. I know these are kind of, again, this is like
you're not going to like my lock of the night, Steele.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I'm either taking the Blackhawks on the money line at plus 212 or Hawks plus 1.5 on the puck line for minus 125. But the Hawks have won the last 8 meetings. They won earlier back in December. These are two teams, again, that are bottom 12 in the league right now. Obviously, the Ottawa Senators are a much better team. But the injuries to their goalies right now, they don't have Josh Norris. They have won a couple of big games over the llast stretch. I think they're 7-3-0 in their last 10. But again, I'm going to follow the trend in this one. Blackhawks either on the puck line plus 1.5 or money line at plus 212 against the Ottawa Senators.
If I were to wager against the Sens, which I'm not because they're my lock of the night on the money line, give that away right away. I would actually take the Blackhawks plus 1.5 because I think this could be a close game.
Yeah.
Could be. What I saw from the Ottawa Senators, though, in these 2 wins with Hellberg and then Mandalese in the cage, especially that 40-plus save first performance from Mandalese, That is the kind of thing that inspires a team that's really had nothing to be inspired by this entire season. You can see this team is playing for the goaltenders. And I think from what I've actually seen from the Chicago Blackhawks over the last 3 games, there is nothing going on in Chicago whatsoever. I'm here for the take, though, Steele, of the trends. They're 9-1 in their last 10 against the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
So there is something going on between when these two teams match up. I will say, though, a lot of those games for that head-to-head record that we're talking about is probably a very different Chicago team, but I'm here for it. That's my lock of the night, Steele. I really do think Sens on the money line is a perfect thing to parlay with something else. Parlay them with the rest of my picks. If you have a lot of money, hammer the Senators on the money line minus 190. And very quickly, the New York Rangers and Edmonton Oilers have been involved in some high-scoring run-and-gun type games over their last 4 or 5 for each teams. I'm talking 6-4, 6-2, 6-3, 4-3 for the Rangers, and for the Edmonton Oilers, 5-4, 6-2, 6-3, 7-3. This is screaming over. The Edmonton Oilers can't get a save from either of their goaltenders right now. Jack Campbell, was there a couple of times against the Red Wings. They should have beat the Red Wings. The Edmonton Oilers are playing good hockey. So are the Rangers, but neither of them are getting good goaltending. Shesterkin let in 4 against the Canucks the other night, Steele.
Yeah.
I'm going with the over. The over has gone over the total for the New York Rangers in 5 straight. The total has gone over in 5 of 6 for Edmonton. That was my second pick of the night. Kings puck line for me. Rangers, Edmonton over, and my lock of the night, Sens money line.
I like 2 of those picks. I still think the Blackhawks, the trend there. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with it. I'm feeling the 2 trends for my first 2 picks. My lock of the night, I'm taking the Rangers on the money line plus 113 against the Oilers. And like you said, you can't trust either Jack Campbell or Stuart Skinner right now. Stuart Skinner let 6 goals in against the Montreal Canadiens. They lose 6-2 to them. They lose 5-4 to the Detroit Red Wings. Jack Campbell, I think 3 or all 4 of them were muffins, just goals that you should not be allowing.
He made a couple of good saves, but he looked awful.
The 4 goals, though, were awful. Like, those should not be going in whatsoever. No. And, like you said as well, Shesterkin and the Rangers, goaltending-wise, have not been playing any better, but they've looked great offensively. They're getting it done. Tarasenko's looked great in a Rangers jersey, playing with Panarin and Zibanejad. So I feel the Rangers, plus if you're going to give me those odds at plus 113 right now, I'm going to take it every single day. So those are our picks. Those are our locks of the nights as well. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday. That's where you can catch us 5 days a week, available on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. And thank you so much again for tuning in for today's podcast with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
Hey, Prime members, you can listen to this Locked On podcast ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today.
Hi, this is Walker Mayo, one of the local hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Instead of hearing me right now, we could be talking about your business and helping you reach local, passionate sports fans just like yourself. Unlike any other podcast, Locked On gives your local company the unique ability to reach local podcast listeners. If your business wants to connect with local sports fans that are well-educated with disposable income, then let's put your company right here on this Locked On podcast. Local fans love to support local businesses. Text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising and let us know who you are. Our team will assist you to achieve advertising success with Locked On. Once again, text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising. We look forward to hearing from you.
Did you watch every NHL game last night? Of course not. That's impossible. So Locked On brings you Locked On Game to Game NHL. With Locked On Game to Game NHL, we take you inside every arena to every game and give you the Locked On local experts insight. And by the end, it's as though you were at every game. Find Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Locked On NHL feed and follow today. Locked On Game to Game NHL, taking you to every arena for every game with the local experts. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.